Cook Serve Delicious is a fascinating game because it's essentially a typing game. The entire game is basically just quick time events, but it's contextualized in such a nice way. You feel like you're cooking, context matters, how you theme your game matters. This is a case study on what happens when you let the fantasy carry your game. Let's figure it out.
I think cooking is so universal, and it's like, I think it encompasses all genders, and it's just like everybody loves MasterChef and Top Chef and the Great British Bake Off, and it's just so easy to relate to cooking, or if not cooking, then delicious foods. And it's just such an easy avenue that it's just fun to target that instead of something like, I don't know, like a platform or something where now you're really, it's a lot harder to get themes and it's a lot harder to find that audience. Usually
what I think makes for a strong fantasy is if it's something people would love to experience in real life, but for some reason can't, or maybe in real life it's too dangerous or it's too much work.
Sure, yeah.
And they just want to live out that fantasy without having to go through 3 years of culinary school or something like that.
Yeah.
Also, what I find interesting about it is that it probably feels better than actual cooking. And that's something you said earlier as well, that you don't really like cooking in real life, but you do like cooking games. I feel like in Cook Serve Delicious, you almost feel like a cooking god. Like if you're you're really fast, basically you can prepare a burger in like 2 milliseconds.
Yeah, for sure. It's fun because I was a barista for a majority of like 6 years or so. And a lot of that frantic pace and that frantic feel comes directly from me being a barista, because you're constantly making drink orders, and if you get the milk steamed, then you have like 5 seconds to make something else and all this stuff, so you're running around, and a lot of that comes from my own experience. Yeah,
that's interesting. And then did you take some inspiration from that then? Yes,
I did. And as far as theming goes, the only reason Cook Serve Delicious 2 came into existence was there was at the time it was called Spike TV, and they were running a show called Bar Rescue, and they approached us to make a bar rescue themed game, and it would just be like a bar themed Cook Serve Delicious. And I didn't really know anything about mixed drinks, or I don't even drink, so it's just like hard to really feel excited about it. But I thought, well, this is a cool opportunity. I can't say no. And those talks kind of went away pretty quickly. They were just kind of like, okay, well, we asked, but whatever. They didn't really get back to me. But the gears in my head were already turning, and I was like, oh man, I could totally make a sequel to Cook Serve Delicious. And so as far as theming goes, like, yeah, we could have definitely made like a bar version of that. But then it comes into, what do you have passion for? And I love Bar Rescue. I thought that's a fun show, but I wouldn't know anything about making drinks and the feeling of being behind the bar counter, making drinks for people. It's pretty alien to me. It's not one-to-one like barista. Like, it's just so different. So yeah, I think you totally could fit this gameplay style onto other themes for sure. But for me personally, it would be hard to find anything other than cooking that would be easy to make.
Okay, so maybe it's also just a bit that cooking fit the sort of gameplay you wanted?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Because it's kind of an interesting mix between time management tasks and just pressing buttons quickly, right? You kind of have to keep an eye on timings and make sure you keep track of everything, while at the same time just smashing the correct buttons on the keyboard.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that you feel horrible when you start doing it, but it has a very satisfying and high skill ceiling. You can become incredibly good, and when you nail it, it feels incredible. Yeah. Much better than cooking in real life.
Exactly.
Something interesting happened with Cook Serve Delicious 3, though, with the fantasy, because you went in such a different or not entirely different direction. You kept the cooking aspect of it, which is a cool fantasy already. But you decided to combine it with like some action elements and with the food truck. You already explained a bit of the reasoning behind that you just needed to switch things up. Otherwise, you'd get bored of it and it would drive you insane. But I'm sure there were also some marketing thoughts behind that, maybe.
Well, No, only because I was in charge of the marketing at the time, and so that was bad because no one was there to tell me, you can't do this. What are you doing? This is not marketable. Why are you doing this?
Also, I think it was a bad call to add that to the game.
You know, it ended up not being a bad call. It was totally the best call I think I could have made. But I think if somebody was in charge of marketing, that wasn't me, they probably would have talked me out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a stroke of luck that no one stopped me from making Cook Serve Delicious 3.
Well, in a way, what I really like about the theming in 3 is that it feels even more like an action game. Even though it's like a game about cooking, you constantly have like the street scrolling past you in the background, and it really fits that speedy feel of the game.
Yeah,
that's kind of a good match.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have still been in a food truck. It would have just not been robots shooting each other apart. Probably would have gotten talking out of I would probably gotten talked out of.
The food truck is interesting because I feel like a big part of the fantasy is also like this building a restaurant or something. I feel like that's something people find cool. You know, that's one of the things again that you don't really get to do in real life, and that I feel like a lot of people would be interested in, just building a restaurant if it weren't so much work and was so expensive.
Sure, yeah.
So do you think having a food truck is an equally strong fantasy in that regard? Do you think...
I think it's fun. And I think, well, with Cook Serve Forever, now you're running a food cart. It's not even a truck anymore. So we're progressively downscaling with every game.
Okay.
But with the food cart, it doesn't even really come into play with Cook Serve Forever. Like, you can't decorate it because you never see it. And it's more of a story element. And so that's been interesting, kind of balancing what the player can do and not do, and how we mitigate, you know, them feeling like, well, why isn't this in it? The last game had this.
I see, because usually you have that kind of power creep in sequels where every sequel kind of goes bigger. Now you're doing it in reverse. You're going smaller.
A little bit. Smaller in some areas, bigger in others. So I feel
smaller
like
in the theming, like in the now you don't own a big restaurant, now you own a food truck. Okay, now it's just like a little food stand that you
exactly. And honestly, it's the last few games where it is you're the best chef, but now this game you're playing as our character Nori, and so you're living out her life. And this is not really a story about the player anymore. It's a story about these characters that we've created. And with that allows us to kind of peel back a little bit of the self-customization stuff and tell a story.
In the trailer, I've seen that worked really well. Like, it didn't catch me in that sense of I want to build a giant restaurant, but it kind of caught me on a more emotional level, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we're really excited this story is really fun. And
so kind of this Ratatouille vibe of cooking is not just about building a giant restaurant. Cooking is like about the feelings and the experience.
Absolutely. I think you 100% nailed it for sure.
All Cook Serve Delicious games were made using Game Maker, and you too can start making games right now. There's a link in the description. Download Game Maker for free, try it out. It's super easy to get started. Thanks a lot to David from Vertigo Games for the interview. Check out their games, they're absolutely awesome. I even recorded a couple more interviews with David. Once they're out, they should be linked right here on screen. Keep watching, and we'll see you in the next one.